Tea Leaves, your source for obsolete computer games. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than doing a polished presentation where I talk about an old computer game, we're going to do a walkthrough or a let's play of Dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts by Avalon-Hill was a sequel to an earlier game, or a remake really, of Computer Bismarck, one of the earliest computer games. Now, in Computer Bismarck, you play the German admiral leading a fleet consisting of the battleship Bismarck, the, at the time, strongest, most powerful, most heavily armored ship in the North Atlantic, and its support heavy carrier, the Prince Eugen. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. You'll see it spelled in the game. Someone who knows German can correct my pronunciation. As it tries to break out into the North Atlantic to harass and sink Allied shipping. Now, I'm not going to record the entire game here. There's a lot of downtime in this game, a lot of hunting for the enemy or being hunted, and I'll probably cut some of that out. So we get a brief introduction to our goal. While we wait for this to load, can we say how weird it is that so many of these war games put you in the position of the Germans generally, but the Nazis specifically? I always felt a little icky about that, and I think that ickiness is kind of appropriate. I mean, I think it's counterfactual. It's meant to be, well, what if the Gauls defeated Caesar? That kind of thing. But it is weird. Okay, so now we're looking at the screen, and immediately we can see one of the challenges of playing games on the early Apple II is that text could be unreadable if you were using a color monitor because of these anti-aliasing artifacts. You can see here where this F has a purple fringe, but this O has a green fringe, and that's because the Apple II sort of faked color by where what memory offset a given bit pattern began at. So to keep our sanity, I'm going to flip back and forth between color and black and green here. And you can immediately see if you're using a green screen monitor, everything's very readable. So on the one hand, when I was using an Apple II in 1980, I had a green screen because my parents were incomparably cheap. And I felt really bitter about that at the time, but it's just actually a lot more pleasant an experience to read. We'll flip back and forth as we go on here. So we'll be shipping out from Bergen, Norway, which is right around here. And we don't get a lot of help here in terms of knowing what we have to do. If we hit a question mark, nothing happens. If we say H, nothing happens. You really needed either the manual or a lot of patience to figure out how to play the game. And of course, most of these games honestly were pirated. So as a kid, I had a lot of patience. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set our course by hitting C. So the course here, 0 is up, 90 is east, up. 0 is north, 90 is east, 180 is south, and 270 is west. So we want to get to this line here. These sets of lines represent the two convoy routes leading to Britain. And we've got basically four possible approaches. One approach is we can go down here through the English Channel and probably get destroyed somewhere around here. Every ship the British have will converge on us and just tear us apart. We could try to thread the needle here south of the Faroe Islands and north of Scotland, but Britain has a major military base in Scapa Flow. If you try and just go straight through, you will get destroyed and torn to pieces. We could try to thread the needle here, coming down north of the Faroe Islands, but southeast of Iceland, but we'll probably get spotted by a torpedo boat and get torn to pieces. Instead, we'll do what the Bismarck historically did, and we will go up here between Iceland and, what is this, St. John's or Greenland? I'm an American. I have no sense of geography. We're going to try and come through this needle, through this passage here, where we will probably get detected and torn to pieces. The theme here, you might be guessing, let's start heading northwest. The theme here is that the Bismarck does not have great chances. The likely outcome of every game you play is you're going to get caught. You will kill maybe a couple of British battleships, maybe one, maybe two, and then eventually you'll lose through attrition. But sometimes you get lucky. So here you could see we've sailed out of Bergen, and immediately, like right away, we've been spotted by a flying boat. So we will adjust our course a little bit. I'm not sure how much that helps. So now I set my course by hitting S. I can also set my by hitting C. I can also set my speed by the S key. And I think our maximum speed is around 30 knots. So we'll go ahead and set that. And then you can hit 1 through 9 to say how many hours you want to sail for. So let's sail for 4 hours. Is it actually sail if you're a powered ship? We'll travel for 4 hours. Now you could see here we've got a small line indicating our history, our course. We may hear some beeps. Those beeps would be radar contacts. A single beep just means the passage of time. And if we hit the space bar or something, or really any key, I believe, it will interrupt and give us a chance to take some action. So you can see here, it's the middle of the night. Visibility is very low. So I'm going to hit the V key, and the V key should bring up our radar contacts. So we've got 2 circles here. The larger outer circle is our radar area, and the smaller dotted line is what you could actually see visually. And it's entirely possible to have ships show up in this radar area that you can't see. And that's actually a pretty good way to engage the enemy if you can swing it, because the smaller ships are just going to run away from you. And so by waiting until they get into visual range, you'll have a much better chance of actually destroying them. All right, we're going to adjust our course here. And we're going to hit F, which just means send time forward until something interesting happens. We are very near the edge of the map, and once again, we've been spotted by a flying boat. The game does play fair. It is modeling the position of all of the British ships, and whenever we're spotted, I'm changing my course to head due west here, whenever we're spotted, it's going to start vectoring those ships towards us. So one advantage of this very roundabout path that I'm taking is that hopefully we'll be dragging some of the larger ships out of position as they chase where we were. Now, historically, I believe that by this time in the war, the British had captured and possibly cracked the Enigma machine. So the British actually knew where the Bismarck was and where it was going, almost at all times. But they were faced with a problem that if they were too good at anticipating it, the Germans might figure out that their communications, that their ciphers had been compromised and cracked. So the British went to great lengths to send out boats or spotting planes whose job it was to basically get seen by the ships they were targeting, to try to create a plausible excuse for how the British knew where they were. Once again, we've been spotted. I'm going to go ahead and change course a little bit. Let's, we're a little too close to the top of the map here. I do not know what happens if you sail off the top of the map. So we're going to go for 3 hours here, and then we'll jog back the other way. Let's adjust our course back northwest a little bit. Now we're going to try and thread the needle here through this passage. Got this warning here that we're near an ice flow. I don't know what that causes. I don't know if that makes you go slower or more slowly or could damage the ship. I don't usually come this close to the Arctic. Oh good, we've been spotted again. This is the story of the Bismarck's life. One of the interesting things about this game is it is written, I believe, in Applesoft Basic. That opens the possibility of actually making changes yourself one of the things I've long thought about doing with this game is modifying it to actually display the positions of the major British ships. That would be, I think, fascinating to see how the AI in the game is reacting. Maybe I'll do that as a project one of these weeks. So you can see another thing I haven't mentioned here, you do have limited fuel. So the goal is not just to destroy British American shipping, but to destroy it and make it back. So how do you know if you're going to make it back? Well, if you hit the E key, that will show you your endurance. And you could see here we have different fuel efficiencies at different speeds. Right now we've got just over 6,000 fuel. And you can see there are 4 ports that we can return to, and they are a certain number of nautical miles away. Not a problem at any speed right now, but it's worth knowing. The other thing we can do is we can hit R, and that brings up this route map, which reminds us where we're likely to find the various convoys. All right, so we're going to go. Let's advance time a little more. See you when something interesting happens. So I flip back to color here because with the particular angle of attack I'm taking, you really get to see the purple and green Apple II anti-aliasing in all of its glory. But I can't stand it, so I'm going to switch back to green. Oh, the other interesting thing here as we switch from green to color is note that these areas that are filled in when you're in color mode are actually holding a pattern in black and white. I don't think you gain any efficiency by drawing that pattern, but it's just very striking to me that you could use essentially blur to draw in that way. Okay, so we are very close now to the convoy route. The northern convoy is providing supplies to Britain. The southern convoy, this line here, is the route for what's called a Winston Special, WS8, going to North Africa. And that convoy is going to be supplying North Africa in the context of the game. If you manage to sink that convoy, the Germans win in North Africa, which is a very depressing thought. So I'm going to change my course here to head east a little bit, or mostly east. And let's take a look and see if we have anything on our radar. I don't think we do. We would have heard a beep. The other thing we can do is we can send out a float plane, which will probably reveal our position to the enemy, but why not? So I'm going to hit A to send out an Arado float plane. It did not reveal our presence to the enemy, and it sees nothing at all. There are no ships around here. So that's good and bad. It suggests that we're not about to get jumped, but, you know, I am here to hunt ships, so let's head east and see what happens. We'll go for 5 hours. Still nothing on the radar. Now, I want to hit these convoy routes, but I don't want to get too close to England. So what I'm going to try and do is cut across from this northern route to this southern route. And that will also put me in a better position to make it back to one of these 2 ports in Spain or France if I need to run away, which history of this game shows that I will need to run away. We've been spotted again. We are still very far away from the convoy route. I should note that successfully getting out into the North Atlantic at all is already more successful than my average game of Dreadnoughts. The reason I wanted to show you this game is that this is a rare example of a retro game that I still break out and play every so often. It holds up surprisingly well. There is a tactical portion of the game that you're going to see, hopefully, if and when we encounter another ship, and that is almost a second game in and of itself, in addition to this hide-and-seek match we're playing right now. So I'm going to go ahead and send out another float plane. Okay, finally something has happened here. So you can see that to our northeast, within, not in radar distance, but pretty darn close, there is a British battleship. I don't know any way to find out the identity of that battleship, short of getting close enough to it to get shot. But I'm not interested in fighting a battleship. I want to fight defenseless convoys. So this seems like a good time to stop moving eastward. Because I sent out a float plane, I have to wait one cycle. Okay, and head south, due south. Our fuel is looking okay. My hope is that that battleship is going to where we were rather than to where we're going. Do not worry. As long as the British have not broken our codes, we are invincible. Let's send out another float plane now that we're on the convoy lines. So we lost the float plane. This happens a lot. I would say it happens more than 50% of the time. Maybe later we can look at the AppleSoft basic listing and figure out the exact chances of it. So we can break radio silence to try and get that float plane back, but doing so will alert the enemy to our presence. And half the time of that, you often don't get it back. So I'm going to say, nope, that plane's gone. It's a lost cause. We lost another float plane. It does occur to me that sending these planes out in the middle of the night might be why I'm sending these young men to their deaths. Let's wait until morning, and we'll send another one out then. Thick fog over the North Atlantic. All right, clear visibility. Let's send out another plane. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is really exciting. We've sent out a float plane, and what we see is that almost due south of us, there are 3 convoys. 2 very large convoys defended only by destroyers, and then a smaller convoy that looks like it has some cruisers with it. That smaller convoy is probably Winston Special 8. So, because we sent a plane out, we still have to travel at a course of 185 degrees for 1 more hour. Then I'm going to switch our course to straight 180 and hopefully make contact with these convoys. We have contact. So that is a convoy. Combat in this game is usually optional unless there's an enemy battleship. If an enemy battleship is in visual range, you have to fight it. If it's a convoy like this with only cruisers or destroyers, you don't have to fight it. I'm going to fight it because I want to show you all what the battle interface looks like, and this is really my main objective. I don't think we're going to necessarily catch up to them, but let's see what happens. So I hit B here to enter battle mode. And like everything on the Apple II, that involves waiting for a little while. Flashy text. You thought it was the early World Wide Web that introduced it? Nuh-uh. All right, so now we're looking at the battle screen. We can see that there are 3 ships we're chasing, a light cruiser, the convoy, and a destroyer. And we're at a certain scale here. So 3,000 yard scale, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27,000 yards. I think that is probably out of range of my main guns. I'm not sure, but we could certainly try and take a pot shot. And let's focus our fire on the cruisers, the only thing that's going to be able to even scratch the Bismarck. So you maneuver your ships in battle mode by giving orders. So the orders you give by hitting M. Actually, I think this is one place where it actually does give you a little bit of instructions, which is amazing. Apple II games generally did not have built-in manuals, but this one has this, which tells you a little bit about it. We could hit D for damage or status. We're going to see that at the end of each round, so I'm not going to go in there. So we could hit M for maneuver, And then our maneuver orders are basically L to turn L, R to turn right, L to turn L to turn left, R to turn right, and then a number to move a certain number of maneuver points. The Bismarck has 5 maneuver points. So you could type something like 1L, 1R2, which would mean move 1/5 of your movement, turn left, move another 1/5, turn right, and then spend the rest of your movement. These dudes are due south of us, so we're just good. We're headed in the right direction. We're just going to say N to go on to the next phase, and you'll see this B probably move a square. Oops, actually set our maneuver to what it was before, and now we're going to N. The Bismarck moves south a little bit. The Prinz Eugen, someday I'll learn if I'm pronouncing that right, can actually move a little further, faster than the Bismarck, so I am going to give it a maneuver of 6. Even though its maneuver is only 5-3, it will do the right thing with respect to that. And again, we will also target the Cairo. We'll hit N, and it will also be moving south. So the $64,000 question here is, how fast is that convoy? I believe it is slower than the battleship. So as long as we can catch up to it, we should be okay. And you can see that the Cairo is turning to face us because it needs to defend that convoy, which is great for us. So now we can see we get all of these numbers. This is how combat is resolved. This is telling us that the Bismarck fired 4 shots at the Cairo from a very far distance, and all 4 of those shots missed. So we hit the space bar to advance. Secondary guns also fired, so it is in range. That's great. Those also missed. The Prinz Eugen fires, misses, and the Cairo's too far away for the smaller guns on the Prinz Eugen. I'm hopeful that that means that we are not yet in range of the Cairo, and indeed we are not. Oh dear, and there is also now a heavy cruiser has joined the battle. That's not great, but as long as no battleships show up, we should survive this battle and be able to take out the convoy as well. So I'm going to do... I'm going to keep the Bismarck's primary guns on the Exeter, and I'll keep the secondary guns targeting the Cairo, and we are going to continue to just charge straight south here, confident in our armor. I'm going to have the Eugen target the destroyer escort with its primary guns and keep the Cairo on secondary. Now the game does model facing, so if we were to turn our flank to these ships, we would be able to bring more guns to bear. But in this particular situation, since we have to get that convoy, turning is not in our advantage. The enemy is moving closer. We miss the Exeter. All right, we've started now to make contact with the Cairo. We shot 4 of our secondary guns, our smaller guns, and we hit with all 4 of those shots. Let's see what happens. We get a little schematic of that ship. It's not a terribly interesting ship. We can see that it's faster than us for now. Our first hit the control tower. We took out one of its guns. That's great. We took out 2 of its guns, and we did some damage to the superstructure. So even though we took out those 2 guns, it will still get to fire them this round. The game posits that all of this combat is happening simultaneously. We got very lucky. And you can see here the Bismarck can take a lot more hull damage than any of the challengers. Let's go on to the third turn. We're getting very close to the smaller ships. Since the Cairo's guns, bow guns, have been taken out, I'm going to change my secondary target for the Bismarck to this destroyer escort, just mostly to protect the Prinz Eugen. The other thing I'll call out is that as we've moved closer to the enemy ships, our scale has changed. We are now at a 2,500 yard per dot scale. I'm comfortable with how the Prinz Eugen is targeted, so let's go ahead and... You know, I'm not. I think that the Eugen will target the destroyer with its secondary guns, and it's going to switch to the Exeter because that's the biggest threat. And we're going to go south. Continuing to charge straight into battle with no strategy whatsoever. You can see that Cairo just sort of turned left because it wants to bring its stern guns to bear on the Bismarck. We missed the Exeter again. That's a real bummer. And we missed the escort. All right, we managed to land some hits on the destroyers here, but we don't do any appreciable damage. The Exeter scratches us. Turn 4. It's getting tight here. All right, I'm no longer worried about these little ships. I think at this point I am close enough to the Exeter that that's really my primary concern. So I am just going to charge in with the Bismarck and try and take this guy out as soon as possible, and we'll clean up the smaller ships later. And I'm going to do the same thing with the Prinz Eugen, only that ship is going to turn left by 45 degrees. All these turns are 45-degree turns. Actually, we'll do L6 just in case that rounds off in an interesting way, to hopefully get more of its secondary guns pointed at and firing at the Exeter. We're going to move, and then we'll see the enemy move. Now the Exeter is crossing the Bismarck's T, which is unfortunate for us, but I think unavoidable in this situation. Finally, we land a hit on the Exeter. Let's see how that goes. We hit its hull, we hit its superstructure, and we took out its stern gun. That's wonderful. That's what this X turret. X is one of the stern turrets are X and Y. The bow turrets are A and B. If we use up all of those hull points on the Exeter, then the ship will sink. We hit it with our secondary guns as well. Okay, we took out one of its secondary guns. And now the Eugen lands 4 shots on the Exeter. So special damage. Each of these ships have, rooms like radar control or gunnery control, and if you take them out, then you degrade the performance of the ships in various ways. I don't know offhand what taking out the forward plotting room does. Oh, this was good. So we shot one of the, just to give you an idea of what this game is modeling, we blew up one of the Exeter's secondary guns, this gun on the side in the front, and there happened to be a shell in the gun when we blew it up. That shell blew up and caused a little more damage, which is great. Good for us. Bad for them. Ooh, 6 hits. Hopefully we'll do some hull damage here. As ships take hull damage, they do tend to go more slowly. So these, oh, we took out one of its primary guns. That's fantastic. So these things, there's another explosion, and we did more hull damage. One more piece of hull damage to the Exeter, and we have sunk the only credible threat in this battle. So things, now the Exeter is shooting back at us, things tend to snowball. If you take damage, you lose guns, you go more slowly, and that tends to make you do worse in battle. So now you can see the Bismarck has lost a gun. There's no way for us to ever get that gun back. This is one reason why you want to spend the early part of the game avoiding battles. Any battle with anything other than, well, our radar was destroyed, anything other than these convoys is potentially, you're putting yourself at risk for no real gain. The Cairo has really raked us over the coals here. Let's see what happens. We lost our radar. And our gun is starting, our main gun is starting to get damaged. That's not great. All right, now that we've taken care of most of the Exeter's main guns, I think we can start splitting our fire again between the Exeter and the Cairo while continuing to charge south. The Eugen, we're going to turn it back right again. So it is heading south, and we are going to, now let's target the destroyer with our secondary guns and the Cairo with our primary guns. No, that was wrong. I think this round is going to make or break it. When we're as close as we are now, you're going to see a lot more hits than you do at distance. The Exeter, you could see, has started to run away. A few hits on the Cairo. Took out another one of its guns. That's good. So we just hit its aft steering, and you could see that its speed dropped from 32 knots to 16 knots. So that's a pretty big deal. It means that if we chose to end this battle and run away, the Cairo would not be able to catch up unless they score a few lucky hits and manage to slow us down. Oh, and we get a very lucky hit in the boiler room. The Cairo will blow up now with a happy sound effect. And now we'll try and take out the destroyers. We took out 2 of them. Even though the Cairo is sunk, it does get its last licks in, which could be painful for us given that it's so close. And it did damage one of our guns. I believe that gun can still fire with the 1X in it, but it's, you know, not as efficient, won't do as much damage. And now at this point, we're close enough to the convoy to see that it is indeed Winston Special 8B or whatever. So what are we going to do? Well, we can stop targeting the Cairo because it is far away. Let's continue to, let's have the Bismarck focus entirely on the Exeter. And then let's have the Prinz Eugen start taking pot shots at the convoy and continue to target the escort with its secondary guns. And you'll note that we are down to a 2,000 yard scale, so this map continues to change. And in fact, at this scale, you could see the Bismarck and the Eugen moved 2 squares, and the convoy only moved 1. So we are indeed moving faster than it. Taking a shot at the Exeter again. We hit a bunch of things, but did not sink it. So now, looking at Winston Special 8B, we can see that it has 5 ships, and it's moving at a max speed of 12. And it doesn't get the fancy diagram. If we hit it at all, we will start taking out those ships in short order. They're essentially unarmored. Note that we do have the headings now of the Exeter and the escort, so I don't want the Exeter to get away, so I'm actually going to start turning the Bismarck to face it and give chase. And I know that it's going slowly, so we should be able to catch it, and I'm going to start shooting some fire from the Bismarck at the convoy as well, since that is, after all, our primary target. The Eugen will continue on its course, and I like the way its guns are configured. We'll just have it continue. You can see the Eugen moved 3 squares there. We're down to 1,500 yards a square. Come on, let's take out this heavy cruiser. The superstructure is completely taken out. What that does is that any further damage to the superstructure will be transferred to the hull, so it makes it more likely that we will blow up this ship. And it's a moot point because the next shot hit the hull, and we've destroyed the heavy cruiser Exeter. Perfidious Albion lies at the bottom of the sea. So at this point, the only real threats have been dealt with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to send the Bismarck after the escort, essentially, just to clean them up. And since the Eugen is the fastest ship I have, I'm going to send it towards the convoy, and it will have no trouble destroying it. It might take us a couple turns to get close enough to guarantee that we hit, but this battle is essentially over. Took out another destroyer. The escorts, or rather the convoys, start to go down. The Eugen is having no trouble destroying the convoy. Going to continue with the same plan. Actually, the destroyer is theoretically a little faster than the Bismarck, but I'm not actually worried that it's going to escape. And there goes the last destroyer. And there goes Convoy Winston Special 8B. The Germans will now win in North Africa because of our heroics here today. Don't you feel good about that? I feel kind of creepy about that, actually. I don't like it. Makes me feel guilty. As we're using an Apple II, you can hear the disk drive loading, and we have to load back in the main game. It will pick up where we left off. So now we have a choice. We could sail around the North Atlantic, looking for other convoys to increase our victory point score. But at this point, because we've had this pitched battle, every British battleship knows where we are and is heading straight for us. And in fact, you could see Bismarck spotted. So we are going to run like the cowardly dogs we are. I'm going to set a course to 90 degrees. I always say speed of 32 knots because that's how fast the cruiser goes. And let's hit E to check our courses and distances. So we have enough fuel to get back to any of these ports, and the closest port is Ferrol in Spain at a course of 92 degrees. So let's go ahead and lock in that course and travel for an hour and see if there's a battleship nearby. I'm going to hit F for flank speed. That's how I think of it. And just go forward until we're either intercepted or until we reach Ferrol. Serpentine! Serpentine! We might make it. We've been spotted. At this point, I'm just going to go for it. I'm not even going to change course. My logic in not changing course here is that the Bismarck was damaged a little bit, but probably is still strong enough to survive one pitched battle with one battleship. The Bismarck is individually stronger than all of the British battleships. The challenge is that the British have so many of them. Typically what will happen is you'll get into a pitched battle with either the Prince of Wales or the Hood or the Repulse, and you will sink it, but it will do significant damage to you. And then the next one of them that comes along just simply cleans up on you. We're so close. I hardly ever win this game. This is like magical that for a Let's Play, I'm actually going to win a game of Dreadnoughts. Hashtag blessed. And we sail back into Ferrol, Spain, and we're going to get an after-action report about how our battle went. I think this went pretty well, personally. Let's see if the game agrees. We took a little damage. We sunk some ships. More importantly, we sunk that convoy. Major German victory. Convoy Winston Special 8 does not reach North Africa. Rommel defeats the British 8th Army. Axis forces control the Suez Canal. That was a complete, successful, very unusual game of Dreadnoughts. Play again? No. I want to show you one or two other things here. So first off, it's not a copy-protected game. There's a couple of text files here that contain all the data for every ship in the game. You can edit them and change them to your heart's content. The main radar screen that we were looking at is this program Search. And, you know, if you want to see how a fairly large company made a significant game without using machine language, you could do worse than just read this code and you see Applesoft Basic. One of the great things about playing games in this era, especially when they were written in BASIC, is you could get in there and change things. It was very easy to find out what was going on and learn a little bit about how this type of programming works. I did, however, want to show one other thing, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to show that it exists. And it's the one thing about this game that I feel a little sad about, and it comes with just the battle program. So suppose you want to simulate something other than the Bismarck breaking out into the North Atlantic, you can actually start assigning ships from, including ships that are not in that main game, to either side of a hypothetical battle. Here it is. I'm going to add this ship to side 1. There's only 2 German ships in the game, the main game that you play, but there's these other ones that were built, and you can add those to the other side, and then you can fight a battle between them. The missed opportunity here is that when you're playing the Bismarck game, the Hunt the Bismarck game, the computer is operating the enemy side. In the battle program, there is no AI. So it's a fun game to play with your brother or your friend. You sit down, you add ships, you then take turns, essentially hot seat playing each side, but you do miss the letting the fighting against the computer, which I think is a bit of a missed opportunity. So that is Dreadnoughts. It is possibly one of my favorite strategy games of all time. I'm reasonably sure I am the only person in the world who still regularly plays it. But who knows, maybe if you like naval combat games, you'll grab an Apple II emulator and give a round or two yourself. If you do, make sure to let us know how it goes. Thanks for watching.